It's California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today. It's always my pleasure to have my assembly member join us on the program. He is Sebastian Ridley-Thomas, representing significant portions of Los Angeles County. Assemblyman, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Constituent numero uno.
Exactly. And I was pleased to hear that you are now chair of the Elections Committee in the Assembly. I am that dork who enjoys public policy focused on elections. So talk to us. A lot of focus on how people are not participating in elections.
A great deal of concern, and I think that you're one of the leading lights on being an organ of communication on public policy. So I must salute you, Brad.
Thank you.
You know, Rick Orloff just passed away, and we're losing those titans.
From the LA Daily News, for those that are not familiar with, and he was a titan.
And luckily we have Brad Pomerance to make sure that, well, I mean, you contribute to the public dialogue. You talk to our constituents more than we do. I wish that we could do more, and that's why I love what you do, and I want to see more of it. It's the Elections and Redistricting Committee. The redistricting oversight has been delegated by the voters to an independent commission. There is a chance that via a Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court case, that may be no longer, so that would put the responsibility for redistricting, and we may have to do a remap depending on what the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court might be.
What are you hearing?
Well, right now that at least they're open to dialogue and it'll be a close vote. Some people think that it'll be Justice Kennedy who would be a deciding factor.
Did you take a position on Prop 11, and prior to that was it 14? I can't remember the numbers.
I didn't have a public position at the time. I am generally supportive of things that help include the public in dialogue and discussion. I think it was not as well thought out with respect to completely removing legislative dialogue and debate. It's a product of compromise, and the redistricting commissioners had to take off time from their really busy lives to do it, whereas frankly in representative democracy you hire your legislature to do that for you.
The argument goes, though, that what winds up happening is the interest of the party trumps the interest of the voter in drawing the lines, or even the interest of an individual. I mean, I have heard stories from former legislators who have said, literally, a colleague would come up to them and say, here's my house, make sure you include me in the district.
Right.
Now, query if that's per se wrong, but, you know, it does smell a bit.
Yeah, and it can. And the real responsibility in redistricting and reapportionment is to adjust for population changes. And sometimes when you do those adjustments, there are always a number of factors. You can draw a district typically it's at least 2 or 3 different ways you could draw any district in the state. And there would be similar communities, those communities of interest, which became a very important catch term. Some people don't like to break city lines or county lines, or they look at what it looks like when you look at it from the broader map level, like the 10,000, literally the
literal bird's eye.
Bird's eye view. But they don't take into account geography or what an incorporated municipality would be, or what a county line might be. So it misses. Those concerns sometimes miss the points of, well, people move from Los Angeles to the Inland Empire, thus districts shift eastward, thus certain communities may not have the same district as they once did.
Yet we look at what's happened in other states recently. Florida had their lines congressionally, I believe, struck down.
Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia. In Texas,
you
know, we've heard
challenges,
challenges of shenanigans and
partisan gerrymandering.
Right.
Well, the redistricting is an extremely political process, but it is a product of compromise where legislators have to put on their thinking caps previous to the Independent Redistricting Commission, and then they have to weigh the full set of issues. A legislator and legislatures in the whole vote on budgets. They develop policy. They know the specific communities and how they deal with them and treat them differently than independent commission, which comes with less context.
Right, and I'm wondering if California is at a disadvantage given that it redistricts through independent commission, because for better or for worse, some of these other states redistricted in a way to benefit the incumbent party, and that party will continue to benefit throughout the decade. Does that smell? Maybe, but the spoils of incumbency.
And that's what the U.S. Constitution says. It delegates it to legislatures. So my real opinion is that citizen input was a good thing. Having hearings, so if it were to come back to the legislature and we had to do a remap, we would do intense hearings across the state. So we would mirror what we saw in the independent process, and then we would have a very thorough and quick plan because it would only be a 6-year plan anyway.
Or is the Supreme Court, or are you looking at the question of the open primary? Lately there's been a lot of discussion about whether the open primary created the result that was desired.
Well, I think that generally it allowed more large interests, frankly, to play or to engage in elections over a longer period of time, whereas previously they would have to choose in primaries who they might support, and then if they would choose to come back and engage in the general. But for the voter, it's not really helped with choices because you have, in some districts, very similar candidates who advance to the general election. And then it's not as much of a contrast on tangible policy issues. It's almost personality, but not always quite that. It really has allowed larger stakeholders in the political process to figure out how they're going to engage and over what period of time. That's been my observation.
Well, let's go back, if we can, to turnout, which has been abysmal. In Los Angeles County specifically in November, it was amongst the lowest of
31%.
31%.
20 points lower than the next lowest.
And yet we have a robust vote-by-mail program.
Well, it's very interesting. I believe the same for some time. What we found out is that the county, prior to the current registered recorder, Dean Logan, who I think came in 06 or 07, actually had they discouraged vote by mail. And that we need all kinds of tools to make voting easier. One such proposal that the city of Los Angeles has just chosen to do is to put a prepaid postage on the vote by mail application or ballot. Yes, so I'm considering introducing legislation to do a version of that statewide or a pilot program. It would come out of the general fund. Potentially, but we can structure it in any number of ways. Maybe there's a public-private partnership. Maybe there's some other pot of resources that we could bring to bear.
In terms of a pot of resources, what about a lottery pot?
Well, the lottery right now was created by this was created by ballot measure. So you can't touch that, and it's a locked fund for education. About 1%.
No. What I mean is, you may have heard. The LA City Ethics Commission has looked at whether there should be a lottery for those to vote. You can win $50,000 if you vote.
Right.
I mean, goofy idea, but got a lot of press. I interviewed Nathan Hochman. You may know him, the chair of the LA City Ethics Commission, and it's been tabled. But look. At least it's an idea.
A lottery for stamps would make sense, and it would reduce the state burden, but it would have to be statewide.
But what about a lottery if you vote in an election and...
Well, I think that for federal elections you can't pay.
You think correctly?
Yeah. So that's the challenge. If it's consolidated with a federal election,
Couldn't do it.
But Los Angeles right now is in a unique experiment with trying to consolidate its elections. And because you're a 10 out of 10 voter, I know that you wouldn't be mad to have to go to the poll one less time.
I have to ask you. I voted for, in the race in which you ran the first time in a special election.
Yes.
You were but one of 7 or 8 special elections that I was forced to vote in because of a domino effect.
Well, because you're also civically engaged and you will not let up. And I wish that we could copy you and put you in every neighborhood of the 54th district.
But what about letting the governor appoint?
It's a wonderful option, and it would save money. One thing that we've attempted to do a couple of times but haven't gotten to the governor's desk in many years is a elections reimbursement.
Because the county's
because it's mandated by the state constitution, and the state used to pay for it. So that's something we need to consider.
I could talk to you for hours. His name is Sebastian Ridley-Thomas. He is a member of the California State Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance, California.